Hello my fellow collectors, Ryan the Cyber Hobbit here with another 1/6 scale statue unboxing. This is Gandalf the White from Weta Workshop's Classic Series. If you didn't know, the Classic Series is an open edition line that was made in celebration of the 20th anniversary of The Lord of the Rings. So I already own 2 Gandalfs in 1/6 scale, and although I am happy with them, they are posable figures, not statues. I know there's a lot of opinions out there between what is better, statues or figures, so be sure to stay till the end and you can hear my thoughts on the subject. Similar to the other Classic series, there is a panel that opens up to show a bit more information about the piece and how it was made. Something about the behind the scenes for anything Lord of the Rings is just really interesting to me. I feel like I've watched hours of endless behind the scenes for the movies, so it's also nice to see a little bit from Weta as well. Weta, if you're watching this, please post more behind the scenes videos on your YouTube channel. Pretty please. I know I'm not alone on this. So when I first opened this, my first thought was, where's the base? But don't worry, it's safely packaged underneath the styrofoam. As usual, let's start with the head sculpt. So I don't hate it, but it's not the most impressive sculpt I've seen. I mean, there's no denying it does look like Sir Ian McKellen from certain angles, but there's also something just a bit off and I'm not quite sure what. Perhaps my opinion is skewed slightly because I just recently picked up the Asmus 1/6 scale Gandalf the White, and that sculpt is spot on. Here's a comparison for reference. I'm not exactly sure the process that goes into the sculpt, but I do believe Weta does hand sculpts while Asmus does things digitally. Though correct me if I'm wrong with that. With hand sculpting, you can't exactly hit an undo button for certain things. So in that regard, I respect what was achieved here. Don't get me wrong, I do like this, but it's hard to get past my comparisons. Before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the statues set up so we can take a better look on my Lazy Susan. One thing I do think looks better than the Asmus figure though is the hair, even though it's sculpted instead of rooted hair. What wins for me is the accuracy of the hairstyle. It has the flow of Gandalf's hair, instead of being somewhat poofy and left to the user's own efforts to keep it styled correctly. The paint job looks pretty good too. Different layers of whites and off-whites to give it some depth. I like it. Moving on, just below his head we have his little silver brooch. I'm not sure what it's supposed to represent exactly, but it looks good anyway. Next we have Gandalf's elegant wizard robes. I think these look superb. All kinds of different patterns and textures for the multiple layers. And again, it flows correctly. It looks like his clothing has weight to it instead of just sort of floating like it does with the Asmus figure. And also the paint application looks great. It's various colors of white, but then somehow has the tiniest bits of a darker gray coming through it. It looks like I can imagine how it would feel to wear. And this might sound weird, but I love his shoes. The sculpt is great, and they have just a bit of weathering that makes them actually look like he's been walking around. Really nice job. Now for his sword, Glamdring. Looks pretty good and has a nice paint job. It does though look like they made the same mistake Asmus did and forgot the little blue gem that should be on it. I also really like that you can see the tip sort of poking through his robes on the back. Again, the flow is accurate. And then of course we can't forget his wizard staff. There's not a lot to it, but it looks okay. If I'm honest though, the decorative tip at the top is a little rough, though keep in mind I am zoomed in and the roughness isn't near as obvious when you look at it in person. And then last but not least is the base. I'm a really big fan of when Weta decides to incorporate just a bit of something on the base. It instantly gives the piece a location and context instead of just simply being a black display base. I'm not sure exactly where this is supposed to be, but it's a good looking rock. Also under the base you can find the sculptor, Gary Hunt. Nice job, Gary. Okay, so statue versus figure. Which is better? There's no right answer to this, but I'd say it depends on what you value more. This might seem like the obvious answer, but if you are a big fan of posing and like having the option to change up how something looks, then perhaps a figure is the better route. If you're a fan of an overall stylistic portrayal, then perhaps the statue is better. Looking at these two, from first glance, I actually do prefer the statue over the figure. Now, this doesn't apply to all figures, but specifically in this instance, what makes me lean towards the statue is what I mentioned a few times earlier. The flow of things. With a fabric-made outfit at this scale, really, no matter what material they use, it doesn't weigh enough to have the flow that it would at the normal human-size scale. Meaning, in this instance, the clothing doesn't drape as it should. With the statue, this isn't a problem because it was sculpted to have those drapes. And this same concept also applies to the hair. Sure, I can probably do a better job of styling it, but I doubt I'd ever get it to look like how it does on the statue. Now, there's no denying the Asmus figure does have the superior head sculpt, like, by far. But to me, what matters depends on how you look at it. While I do on occasion get a bit up close and personal when looking at these things in my collection, a majority of the time I find myself looking at things from a few feet away. And in this instance, it's sort of hard to tell that the figure has a much better head sculpt than the statue. The statue looks enough like Sir Ian McKellen to make me happy with it. Remember, in my videos, I am zoomed in on a DSLR camera in 4K resolution, able to look at things at a closer degree than I do regularly. The other thing you have to keep in mind is the cost. In this instance, the statue costs $399, while the figure costs $380. But then you have to keep in mind that the figure comes with the horse Shadowfax. So perhaps that's a reason to prefer the figure. Either way, I'm not trying to claim one is better than the other. They both have their pros and cons. I'm pretty sure if I were to drop the Asmus figure off this table, it'd be just fine. If I were to drop the statue off, it would shatter into a bunch of pieces. I guess what I'm trying to say is, pick what you value more and go with that. Or, like with what I'm doing, get both. Okay, so final thoughts. I think this statue lives up to the reputation of the classic series. It's wonderful. Sure, the face sculpt isn't perfect, but like I said before, I don't think it needs to be. It screams the essence of Gandalf, and that's what matters to me. The clothing and paint job are great, his sword and staff look pretty good, and the base gives it a nice setting. I'm very happy to add this to my collection. I give this a 9 out of 10. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up, and if you feel I'm worthy, click the subscribe button. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.